Hello there.
This is where the fun begins.
Hey there guys, Unofficial Star Wars here, hope you're all doing well, and in this video we have our Andor Episode 3 breakdown with different Easter eggs and things that you may have missed throughout this episode, and different references as well. We're also going to have a few theories and predictions kind of sprinkled throughout this video here as well, so stay tuned for all of that. Of course, I think it goes without saying, spoilers ahead. Let's hop right on into it. Two things right off the bat that I just have to get off my chest and just have to mention, I just have to say it. I love how everything that we saw in the last two episodes, the two first episodes of this show, have kind of anticipated and built up into the third episode, because the third episode is just go, go, go. It's all action, and I absolutely am in love with it. It's totally just like going on. It keeps you at the edge of your seat. You just don't know exactly what's going on or what's going to happen. That being said, I am more than happy that they kind of did the show this way with a 3-episode premiere. Now, this is also something that's kind of following underneath the whole like arc idea that they have going on. This is something else I've been talking about here on the channel, kind of off and on, up in the air. Something that they're going to be doing for both season 1 and season 2 with this show is that they're going to follow the kind of Star Wars or Clone Wars animated show there with the different arcs of the episodes, where 3 episodes is going to equal kind of like one storyline type of thing. So that there is why episodes 1 through 3, for one thing, were all released together, and for another thing, they all just line up beautifully together. And for another thing, I love how, just once again, the episodes are leaving off from one another, where there's not a lot of time in between, or like little to no gap, is something that's so cool. It better connects you with the entirety of the universe and the world, and also with your characters as well. It's something I hope that Star Wars does a little bit more of in the future. I love it. Anyway, that being all said, of course, clearly the episode 3 starts off from where we left off, kind of here with the different flashbacks that we've had here with Andor in his earlier days, where he's on his home planet, his home world, and he's living with a little bit of like a tribal type of group, but they're all kids, which is kind of weird. I've mentioned this throughout the last 2 videos. And it is from here where him and his tribal group have gone to explore an Imperial crash site that had recently just crashed near their kind of tribe camp. And so during that overall investigation, it kind of goes wrong. One of those like guys, the Imperial guys, wakes up and goes berserk, accidentally shooting the leader. Well, he kind of does it on purpose because he's like crazy and totally on a rampage. I mean, there's just like no denying that, of course, and it's honestly kind of sad and pretty depressing. Anyway, Andor stays behind at this crash site because he wants to explore it just a little bit more and really stand up for his entirety of his tribal group as well. He feels it almost as a little bit of a duty, but at the same time, you can kind of see something that's like sparked inside of him, and that he's feeling this anger. Something that kind of almost directly like parallels into what we see with adult grown-up Andor as well, that we're seeing now during this actual show and when it's taking place. And once again, as I had mentioned previously in our last breakdown video, these dudes are all like green around the gills type of thing. They don't look so good, and I have a theory about this I want to talk about in a separate future video here on the channel, so hit the subscribe button and stay on the lookout for that by hitting the notification bell. It is from here, after this entirety of this little flashback scene here, we're going to get back to it in just a moment throughout this episode here as well. We're in the current day of when this show is taking place. Andor is kind of saying his final goodbyes here, and now he's visiting one of his friends that works at the kind of like scrapyard mining facility type of area. There's nothing too deep about it, to be honest. It's just simply humanizing your characters, and he's just kind of saying, hey, thanks for it, and I'll see you later type of thing. From there, we have the buyer that is wanting to meet with Andor, that Andor had asked his friend Bix to call in. He is now landing on the planet and is here to visit with Andor, and Andor is going to sell him an Imperial tracking device, is what it seems like. And so that's way Luthen, who's so to speak the godfather, or really the overall, yeah, I guess godfather is the way to put it, I guess creator, or yeah, founding father, so to speak, of the rebellion, is here to buy, and this will allow him to track various Imperial ships and that type of stuff as well, helping him give an upper hand on the entirety of the Empire. Then again, also remember that the rebellion isn't all that much of a thing right now, and he's still kind of currently working on it. Hence the entirety purpose of, well, this show. He quickly also meets up with Bix, the one that calls him in, and she tells him kind of like where to go and what's going on type of thing. From there, this is kind of where the episode really begins to pick up. As I had mentioned at the beginning of this video, this is a fast-paced type of episode. It keeps you on your toes, keeps you at the edge of your seat the entire time. You don't know exactly what's going to happen and what's going on here, especially when you're dealing with all new characters in the Star Wars universe. Well, aside from Cassian Andor, you just don't know what's going on. Like, you don't know like what's going to happen to who. Like, nobody has plot armor, so to speak. Also, this entire scene of, well, all these corpos, as they're called in the show, but really the Imperials, are all aboard this gunship, really reminds me of the First Order from The Force Awakens when they're landing on the planet of Jakku at the beginning of the movie, and there's like the lights flashing and everything like that. We then go into some more flashbacks, and this here is where Andor's like mother type of figure, her name is Marva, meets Andor on the Imperial crash site. They're kind of investigating it and taking a look at it. They're kind of like the beginning of, I guess, like the rebellion in a sense, but we kind of don't know enough to like say that completely. They're really more just like scrappers or scavengers, kind of, I guess, stripping the ship of any goods it might have. And so as we see in this process, they meet up with Andor, and as we later see on throughout this episode, she kind of takes him and gets him out of there, because there's other Imperials that are coming to this crash site to really truly clean it up and I guess get it out of there. And boom, just like that, we're back in like the forefront of where the show is taking place. I mean, as I had mentioned, notice how fast-paced this episode is overall going. From here, we have the Corpos, or the Imperials rather, are going to be landing on the, I guess, planet here now to get a hold of Andor. This is who they're after, and in the last episode breakdown video, an episode overall, Bix's boyfriend named Tim is the one that kind of ratted out Andor. On top of that, also notice the way that this like gunship design also lands like an Imperial shuttle, the white shuttles that we see from the original trilogy, which is really cool. Anyway, these Corpos come stomping onto this planet, acting like they own the place, like any other Imperial that you probably have seen in Star Wars, and like everybody around them is getting those funny looks and everything like that. And as I had mentioned in our previous video, these like little village and town has like their plan set of what happens in a case like this. Like they all kind of go berserk, as you guys are going to see later on in this episode, and they start banging on stuff, and they shut down all of their stores and shops and everything like that, and kind of go into like a full lockdown type of thing for one thing, and for another thing they start banging on walls and that type of stuff in an effort to kind of like intimidate and scare away these Corpos and Imperials, because this is almost like a founding place of the early beginnings of the rebellions. Something else that I have kind of mentioned in previous update videos and insight videos and that type of stuff here regarding the Andor show is the way that the rebellion is kind of being explored and set up overall in this show, and then again throughout the entirety of Star Wars canon, especially during this timeline, or at least time during the Star Wars timeline at that, is that there are kind of like different pockets, so to speak, of the rebellion. They're all like over and scattered around the place, and none of them really know of each other all that much, and this I don't really think is all that much of a thing until we see Saw Gerrera, who we've seen in the trailers for the Andor show, meet up with Luthen, something we'll probably see in a future episode here. But then again, keeping it with the fast pace of this overall episode, as I had mentioned before, we go and see Andor. What is he doing right now? He's like in this little hideout type of area, like a secret little spot of where he's planning to meet Luthen, and that's like it. And just like that, we're switching gears once again, going into some more of those flashbacks where we have Marva on board this Imperial crash site, and they're kind of like talking about back and forth, like what to do with Andor or Cassian, and like should we take him, should we leave him type of thing. Something I kind of forgot to mention at the beginning of this video is the way that like this entire like flashback sequences are kind of like paralleling directly of what's going on currently, at least where the Andor show is supposed to be taking place, 5 years before the events of the Rogue One movie, with having like the Imperials coming down onto the planet and they're in search of Andor, and they're doing the same thing, well, in the flashbacks. Well, not necessarily looking for Andor specifically, but they're coming to the crash site, and like they're like approaching, like they're getting close, and you don't want them to find you type of thing. From there, we have the Imperials go to Marva's home / Andor's home, and they have like a warrant and everything like that. I don't really think they exist necessarily in the Star Wars universe. Like the Imperials are like straight up evil, especially in this episode. We really see like how bad these dudes really are, and something that we've had talked about here for the Andor show is that we're going to see both sides. We're going to see how bad the Empire really gets, and we're going to see how bad the rebellion's really going to get, and that's like a huge thing, is like how bad is the rebellion really going to get, how dirty are they really going to get. Now I would technically count what Andor did in the first episode of the overall show, killing the 2 Imperial officers, and I can't defend it. I mean, he did it out of good reason. Like they were like messing with him, and like they were in the wrong type of thing. Like you just can't defend that. And even then again, Andor doesn't know what the rebellion is even. Like he wasn't a part of it or anything. That's just Andor being Andor type of thing. Anyway, as we see these Imperials like totally tear apart the house and everything like that, they're just like, they're not even like looking like, where do you think he is? You think he's underneath like a pillow or something? Like they're just tearing apart the house, like looking for maybe like any tidbit of evidence. It's right here where, as I mentioned in our previous breakdown video, of where Andor makes his mistake. He gives a comlink to his B droid, and on top of that, he starts talking through the comlink like at the worst case scenario, like the worst part possible of where like they're right in front of the droid and they can hear him clearly like coming through and everything like that, and they are able to track down the comlink, and well, Andor's toast from there, kind of. That is, if Luthen has anything to say about it. They really team up together, and there's a lot of back and forth chatter in this whole sequence here of what Luthen and Andor have to say to each other. Like there's a lot of trust issues going on and everything like that. They're also kind of negotiating and everything like that, as I have previously mentioned in those breakdown videos, and also reiterate right here again about how Andor is trying to sell these Imperial box, or like transmission box or tracker box. It's an Imperial though, to Luthen. Luthen's like the godfather, of course, like of the rebellion and everything like that, and this is in an effort to help Luthen track down other Imperial ships and kind of get the upper hand on the entirety of the Imperials and the Empire. And at the same time, as I have previously mentioned before, we see the entire like village and town starting to like go crazy. They're shutting down all their shops and they're banging on walls and everything like that. They're prepared for this type of thing. Like they've trained for this type of thing, it seems like, almost. And as Marva mentions, it's like it's a reckoning. I mean, it's all in an effort to like intimidate and scare away the Imperials and everything like that. And it really does. Like it sent like shivers down my spine, where she's giving like the entire monologue about like like how like it's when they stop doing it is when you should get scared, and that's when things got messy with Luthen and Andor, and they really are making a run for it and breaking out. It's also right here is where this one dude, I don't even know their names, but he's like really nice, and they come and talk to Bix about how the Imperials are here and they're here for Andor, and it's also here where Tim overhears this whole conversation, and Bix figures that, well, Tim's the one that like ratted out Andor. I mean, who else would have done it? And Tim is totally guilty over it. I almost feel bad for him too as well. Like we later see in this episode, of course, that like he gets shot and he dies and everything like that, but then again, I do have to reiterate, as a Star Wars fan, I have to come up with those crazy like predictions and theories. It's Star Wars, is anybody ever really dead type of thing. Still keeping up with this entire fast-paced thing throughout this episode, we go back to Luthen and Andor. They're discussing about the box and everything like that. It's self-explanatory. However, the tensions are high about, you know, this entire thing with the Imperials being here and everything like that. They're starting to catch on, and they're getting closer and closer to Andor and Luthen. They have to, you know, figure things out. They have to trust each other, and they have to get out of there. Spoiler alert, that's exactly what happens. I will say my only query with not only this episode, but the entirety of this show so far is this scene right here, is where this Imperial officer or guard tells Bix to stop running. I mean, why her out of everybody? Like, everybody around you is running around like crazy and like just banging on walls and all this stuff as well, so why single out Bix? It just doesn't make sense to me. It feels totally random, and just like, I don't know. It just feels weird. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's totally random and just out of pocket. That there's literally my only complaint, as I had said, not only about this episode, but the entirety of this show. The show has been absolutely phenomenal. Story concept telling wise and filmmaking wise. I love the way that they did this show and everything like that. I even more love this scene even more with Luthen. It just reminds me so much of Breaking Bad for some reason, with Walter White kind of just having a plan for like everything. If you guys have ever seen Breaking Bad, I love it. He just like, step 2, always plan your escape, and he has the door rigged and bombed when there's officers outside of it, and he blows it up, and it's so cool. This shot right here as well, as I should mention as well, it's like lower to the ground, showing Luthen and Andor at this explosion site. It's so cool. I love everything about that. Also, the way that they did this like whole shootout action-packed scene right here as well looks absolutely phenomenal. It doesn't feel like too fast-paced or anything like that, or blurred. You're able to keep up with it, but at the same time it's keeping you on your toes, and it's fast-paced, and I love it. It's so cool, and at the same time you're going back and forth between the other Imperial officers who are trying to track down where Luthen and Andor are, and all these other guards. It's here where we get even more out-of-pocket stuff from the Empire. It for one thing truly, I guess, symbolizes the evilness of the Empire, something that we already have kind of known, but like how dirty and gritty do they get? Like, are they just jerks for like no reason? Well, apparently so. Bix tries to make a run for it. I mean, previously before, like, why do you even have her like captive for another thing? Like, everybody around you is running around like crazy and banging on walls and all that type of stuff as well, so why single her out? She tries to make a run for it, and he like shoves her into like the corner. She hits her head and she starts bleeding pretty bad. It's just a dick move, dude. Like, the Empire's bad. And I should say that there is a difference between evil, which is something that you might more resonate with, I guess, Stormtroopers, or maybe Darth Vader, Darth Sidious. Those are like evil kind of characters of the Empire. And then you have these dicks. You just have corpos. They're just dicks, honestly. From there, Andor and Luthen are able to make the run for it, and they start running towards the speeders, and like kind of they have to get into like the red zone, so to speak, here to get to the speeders. However, before that, we see Tim come running into town here, where Bix is kind of being held captive for like no apparent reason once again. He's totally like freaking out about it, the whole, you know, situation with her bleeding and everything like that, and these dudes are even bigger dicks about it. He lunges towards him, not even lunges towards him, he's like running towards Bix because, you know, he's scared. He wants to comfort her, they care for each other type of thing, and they just shoot the dude on sight. I mean, whatever happened to stun type of thing? Like, you guys are just gonna straight up shoot him. What happened to stun? From there, we're going to see Cyril. He's kind of going into a house to kind of camp out there, so to speak, keep eyes on everything. Well, at least he thinks. I just have to say, this is so peak right here. I love the way that they just did this. This dude's like sitting here looking around, chilling, having a great time kind of thing, and all of a sudden he hears a gun click behind him. He's like, oh shoot, I messed up. And it's not even just that. The cinematography, that's what it is. The cinematography just looks absolutely stunningly beautiful. This shot right here of Andor like zooming in on him, it just looks so cool. And he's like interrogating him and everything like that. Like, how many people do you guys got with you? That whole thing. From there, the officer that shot Tim actually was sent back to the Republic ship. I'm not completely sure why. Maybe it was like some type of punishment or whatever. It seems as though, though, that some of the civilians or people that live there in this town and village, because everybody here is like against the Imperials and everything like that, it's kind of like sabotage the ship in a really strange way type of thing there as well, where they tied it to like some scrap metal and whatever. He flies up, he gets it tangled around like this big like ship, and like he gets pulled and dragged over onto the ship, and the ship like blows up, and it's just cool. And from there, we go back to Cyril, where he's like tied up and just like thrown into a corner. I'm kind of shocked that Andor and Luthen didn't just like get to kill the dude, honestly. They should have almost, I would say, but he's gonna have like a whole redemption arc, something I'm speculating and theorizing on. I'll be talking about in a separate future video here on the channel. It's also here where Andor and Luthen make the grand escape. They get held on a couple of speeders here, and they send out this one speeder. Of course, everybody's thinking that they're in there. I believed it for a second, and then I realized like these guys are smarter than that, and that this isn't actually like the speeder that they're in. The speeder goes, they shoot it to death, and it like blows up, and then all of a sudden they come whipping out, and this other speeder away, and it's really cool. I like it. And then from there, it's also paralleling back to the flashbacks as well of how Andor is leaving the Imperial crash site there with his mother type of figure Marv, and kind of back and forth of how he's like leaving his homeworld planet to get away from the Empire. We also get another like shot of Marva who's like crying over it. I mean, I feel kind of bad for her, but they're like mother and son type of figures, and she knows that he's like in some deep trouble here as well. It could get ugly and it could get bad type of thing as well, which leads me to believe that like the rebellion origins go further back, especially with Marva as well, and that she's kind of like one of those key role players as well with the entirety of the rebellion. Bix gets rescued and untied by these two dudes, as I had mentioned earlier before. They're like really nice. I don't know their names or anything like that. I'm not completely sure. They're just like dudes. They're really nice. However, they're in a really big hurry to get out of there because they think that the Imperials are coming back through to cause more trouble, which could be highly likely. I'm curious to see that for episode 4. We just don't know completely. Also, the scene of like this big chum dude officer, the dude that was introduced before, is yelling at Cyril. It's honestly kind of funny. Cyril's just in total utter shock about what just happened. Like, he got played, and he got played hard, and he's also coming to a realization of many different things. For one, what just happened with him, he got outsmarted, he got tied up and thrown into a corner. They made a grand escape and everything like that, and he's also kind of coming to some terms and realizations, I also believe, of the true motives of the Empire. Like, does anybody actually want to be there type of thing? Is anybody actually invested into the Empire as much as he may be? And then it is from here where the episode is kind of finishing off here. We get some really cool parallelism as it's going back and forth, just crossing back and forth of Andor leaving in the current time of when the show is taking place, and then where he's leaving his homeworld and the flashbacks with Marva, and they're kind of taking off. They're going into space and he's watching it all. It's so cool. And from there, there's where the episode ends. This here was an amazing 3-arc episode. I love the way that they did it and everything about that. I already mentioned like my one and only complaint about the entirety episode for one thing, and the entirety of this overall show here as well. This was absolutely beautifully done. I love the story concept telling wise, and everything that's been done, the way that they filmed it and made it, and the production, everything that went into this show here as well, with the practical sets and effects and props for this overall show as well, is very, very just genuinely awesome. I want all of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. I'd actually love to hear what you guys all think. What do you guys think about Andor episodes 1, 2, and 3? I'd love to hear what you guys all think in the comment section down below. Some things that you might have noticed throughout these episodes, and what do you want to see for the future of this show? I'd love to hear what you guys all think in the comment section down below. Leave a like in the video if you did enjoy it, as it really helps the channel, and check out Instagram and official Star Wars for more Star Wars content, link down in the description down below, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. As always, may the Force be with you. This has been Unofficial Star Wars. Have a great one, guys. Peace out.